That's the way computers talk to each other.
Hello, hello. Welcome back, everyone. So we are in our last session this afternoon, the Funding Us panel. Looks like we have Jags, Jena, and Joy. I'm going to give you all a little bit of time to introduce yourselves, and we're going to jump into questions after that. For the attendees, please drop your questions into the Q&A tab located on the right-hand side. And let's get into it. Oh, and Christina. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Jena to start off introductions.
For whatever reason, I just knew I would be first. Thank you so much for kicking it over to me. I just want to start by shouting out the other wonderful women and really just human beings that are on this panel. It's really such an honor to be here with you today. I was like doing quick Google searches right before I joined in, just so I knew who you were and I could give you your flowers. My name is Jena Pruitt. I am originally from the Bay Area. I am the partner at Made in Color Creative Agency. You all heard from my wonderful co-partner, Selena, earlier around the agency and what we do. Made in Color is a creative agency that really prioritizes the talent and expertise of creatives of color. We have grown really quickly over the past 2 to 3 years. Our team is now between 10 and 15 contractors from around the country that I have the opportunity to work with. I personally never thought I would be here. I graduated from UC Santa Barbara with a bachelor's in anthropology and political science, and I thought I was going to be a judge. I thought I was going to work for the government. And after traveling the world, I very quickly realized that really wasn't my calling or my passion. Just a niche detail about me is I am a founder of Made in Color. I am a person that has never had a full-time job. I'm a person that straight out of college really was like, I want to do my own thing. I am going to monetize my own creative talents. And I think that in and of itself has just been a journey. I'm the person who's had to set up their own IRAs and their own financials and all of the things. I'm the person who really has to go and earn every single dollar that I get and every single dollar that I pay for my team. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to share more about my experience as a founder, as a person who's really tried time again. This is not my first venture. It's probably my second or third or fourth. And also just talk about my experience working with companies that are venture-backed, like Clubhouse, being in spaces of entrepreneurship, like the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, the KPOR Center, Jason Calacanis' startup ecosystem, being a part of those things, but actually never receiving funding. And so speaking to that experience that I have had, so that I can, iron out any other kinks for folks who are starting their thing and wondering, like, I also haven't gotten the coins either. So how do we get to the bag? Because I would like to take my coin purse to a duffel bag. You get me? I want duffel bag energy.
I love it. I love it. Victoria.
Hi, my name is Victoria. I'm actually originally from Atlanta. I pay taxes in New York, but I don't live anywhere at the moment. I just got back from Mexico, but I'm in New York now. A little about me. Right now, I am also in a position I never thought I would be myself, which is founding an organization. I am the founder and GP of a venture studio called Seed to Harvest. And at Seed to Harvest, what we're really focused on is really investing in Black, Brown, and women identified founders. But we're also really focused on building companies that have a culture first approach. So my background's in tech. I accidentally went into tech. I was focused in college on international health policy and community health initiatives. I love kids and was all about kind of like empowering communities and healthy kids. I realized pretty quickly I was smart, but didn't have enough skills to really make the impact that I wanted. And so I started into tech because I was in an area where tech is really powerful, and I thought maybe tech and healthcare could be a thing. Never actually worked in healthcare, but learned a lot about tech, became a product manager, and started figuring out just how impactful the industry was and how much power it had, but how often that power was used for not good, in terms of people being pushed out of tech, in terms of products being built with only certain people in mind. And I got really passionate about how I could change that. And so within the last year and a half, I really started thinking about this venture studio and what it could look like, and working on that now with my co-founder. Her name is Isabel Seal. And yeah, so that's what I'm working on now. I'm really excited to be on this panel today, and really excited to meet all you lovely humans, because I love meeting people who are just as passionate as I am about changing this ecosystem as it is now.
Thanks, Victoria. Joy.
Hi, I'm Joy Mbanugo. I work at Google, so a little bit different than some of the other panelists, but I'm so happy to be on the panel with everyone, impressive group of women. I just started my angel investing / limited partner kind of journey earlier this year. I've been in finance almost 20 years, so know the ins and outs of investing, from crypto to stocks, bonds, you name it, I've done it. And I think I ended up in tech kind of by accident. I worked at a big four. I worked at EY. Then from EY, I moved to BlackRock, and one of the world's largest asset manager. And that got me really, really super geeked on investing. And then I left BlackRock and joined Google. And just Google has its own kind of startup ecosystem, which I haven't been able to tap into. There's a whole angel school at Google, which I just came back from Whatley. I'll join, but happy to be here. Happy to talk about how people who are in positions to write checks should write checks. One of my proudest accomplishments, I'm a limited partner in 2 funds, but one of my proudest accomplishments as an angel investor is writing a small check to my cousin who just started her own company with one of her friends. And I told my family, hey, I am leading the family and friends round, and everyone in the family needs to be donating, whether it's $25, whether it's $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. I think sometimes we as women and as a collective and people of color don't even realize that we can support our own family so much. Cousins can support cousins, siblings, parents, grandparents, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
So I'm sorry. I'm happy to. I'll get off my soapbox, but I'm happy to
No, that's one of the questions we're going to be digging into. So please save that. Hold on to that so we can get to it. Christina.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here with you all. My name is Christina Whatley, and I work at an investment firm called Generation. Generation focuses on basically all sustainability themes. I'm on the growth equity team that focuses on planetary health, people health, and financial inclusion. I've been at Generation for about a year. And just to give a little bit more about Generation, we have been in operation specifically focused on climate and sustainability since I'd say it's almost been 20 years. We were founded by Vice President Al Gore, who I like to think of as the OG of climate awareness. I love my firm, love that I get to do impactful investing work. On the personal side, though, like many others have articulated, I have an angel portfolio that focuses on sustainability in part, but then I also have a sleeve that's exclusively focused on Black entrepreneurs in a industry agnostic way. And I think that, one thing that I think a lot about is closing the gap, because so my team focuses on growth stage investments. So that's Series B to pre-IPO. But you have this, huge crop of entrepreneurs that just haven't had access to the system to be able to build companies that are at that stage where they might be appropriate for a $50 million check. So who's helping them bridge that gap from pre-seed to Series B? And how do we create some more of that like proliferation at the earlier stages so that my pipeline, professionally, is more robust. So that's where I focus a lot of my personal energy, is kind of at those earlier stages. But I'll pause there, and excited to delve into the dialogue with everybody.
Great, thank you. Just the collective wisdom of everybody today, and wanting to share that knowledge with their community. We really appreciate everything that you all are doing. So let's hop in, and I'm going to preface it with just one tip from each of you on this next question that I'm about to ask you. So, less than 2% of women are accredited investors that are investing in public or private companies. And that means that women may not even be aware that are accredited around you, that are actively, deploying funds and writing checks. What's one thing, and anyone can jump in on how we can change this narrative?
Tell your friends. I think, like Christina mentioned, she is an investor both professionally and personally. I think telling our friends what we do. Women don't talk about money personally. Like, we don't talk about salaries. We don't. I'm speaking very generally. I'm in finance, so I do. So that's very different. But generally, sometimes women don't talk about finances or investments with their friends. And if you are an investor personally, I think it's something you should discuss with your friends. Like, hey, I'm investing in this. Now, with the whole caveat that you're not giving financial advice unless you're a CFA and all this stuff, and you're not representing your company, blah, 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 all those caveats. But just word of mouth, because then other people can other women, especially women of color, can look and see, oh, hey, I am an accredited investor. I may not be a founder, but I can help, not help, but I can fund Gina, or I can, write a check to a fund that focuses on women, focuses on people of color, so that I am impactful in the community. And yes, I expect a return on my investment, 5 to 10 years, depending on what your investment horizon is, but letting your friends know. And then they continue to tell everybody. I'm all about events. So I've been thinking a lot about investor events, lunches, brunches for women, to women founders and funders, to connect the money with the companies.
I'll just add that I think a lot of people don't even know like what rules are of being an accredited investor. There's two primary thresholds. One being like your annual, or actually three primary thresholds. One being your annual income, which somebody fact check me on this, but I think it's like 200K a year in earnings. Then like you can have a personal net worth of some other amount, or you can actually take the series exam that's required to become a accredited investor, and anyone can take that. You spend some time studying, and there's a lot of resources out there to prepare for the that series exam. But those are, I think, the primary ways that people become accredited investors. And so once you figure out kind of which is the right path, take that step to becoming accredited. And then the other thing that I have found really helpful is looking for syndicates, and finding just like-minded folks to get deal flow from. I'd say probably a third of my deal flow over the last 3 years has been tied to business school. So are you putting yourself into communities where you can source opportunities, I think is super helpful. And Joy, I hope I can tag along to some of your upcoming events, since I'm also, like many others, I'm in the Bay in Oakland. And so, yeah, just finding those folks to build community with, just to echo what's been said, I think is super helpful as well.
Just tag into that. For me, it's really been two things. Kind of putting myself in places where I didn't think I belonged, because right now there's so many options, even just outside of accredited investing. There's crowdfunding on different platforms. there's things like Vinovest where you can invest in wine, Masterwork, you can invest in art. Like there's just so many options right now. And just like being curious about going into places where you think you like maybe don't know what's happening, but being curious enough to just go for it. What I found really interesting about this whole industry in general is that it's really opaque. Like venture is super opaque. It's really hard to find things online or find information. But it's so relationship built that if you just find someone who's like interested in telling you something, they will bring you in to the different options. And like once you're kind of in, like there's just so much information available about all the different options in terms of like how to invest your money. And so really just like showing up to events where people are talking about things, you can learn so much and just get so much information that you wouldn't otherwise get.
The last thing I'll share is from the perspective of a founder wanting to be funded. I really think the best thing I could do for myself at this point is solidify my footprint. I realize that I've done a lot of things. I've made a lot of paths, and I want to be chosen so bad, but I don't think I've made it easy to choose me or find myself. And I think that that is something I could do as a service to myself, is solidify my footprint. And that's things like having a website, like having a record of the things that you have done, having the links to the articles that you've been featured in from the Chronicle, or like all of these things. I think it kind of goes back to that previous conversation we were having about the invest in the person. I think if I could do a better job at really capturing my narrative and the path and all of the things that I've done, I think it would be a little bit easier to be identified as a person that needs that kind of support.
You know, let's continue that. So you're talking about like being found, being visible, being seen. What are some other ways, like lightning round, the best place to find women founders like yourselves? You know, where are they at? Where do they reside? Is it a pipeline issue? Just really quick.
You know, I think it's difficult for me to answer, because I recognize for myself that I'm not a part of a lot of founder communities. And I think that's probably a disservice to myself, but it's because I'm so busy building the business, and I'm so much in cahoots with my business partner and my team and trying to get the next client or whatever the case may be. I don't think that I'm in enough circles with other women founders other than the folks who are my friends or I see on social, right? And so I think that it on one hand, something I'm learning is just about community, and being able to have value add to a community, but also be able to say to that community, hey, I'm looking for funding, right? Like I'm one of those founders that needs it. So that would be my thought on finding and being found. Is I was really doing a reflection on what communities are you a part of, and what opportunities exist to create a brunch like Joy mentioned previously, or something like this.
Another thing I will add on to that, I think like figuring out like sub communities and communities. So like one thing I had initial issues with me as a founder is that there's a lot of like resources and groups for a founder who's building a VC backed company, but not building a VC organization or a studio like I'm building. And so I kind of had to create my own subgroups where I would join an accelerator that might just be a general thing, but then find all the Black people and be like, hi, would you guys like to chat? So there's also a little just like making smaller groups within these bigger organizations that might just be more general and have less of a like gate in terms of entry and who can be involved in it, and kind of creating these subgroups where one, you get more face time with people, but also you start to confine and create your own communities, because like in some cases, some of the communities like might not exist yet, but you can be a part of creating those, especially like your peer communities who like, as you all continue to grow, will just be so important to you.
I want to say, I don't think we have a pipeline issue. I think especially if you look at the stats during the pandemic, women, especially Black women, have started businesses at a faster rate than any other demographic. So that should tell you that's not a pipeline issue. I think the issue is access. It's access to funds. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I mean, I didn't grow up talking about, venture capital, series A, B, C, D. If I went back home and I started talking to just a random person on the street, like, oh, are you pre-seed? Are you series A? Like, where are you? It's really, I think, about access and just knowledge that there's this whole ecosystem that exists that we sometimes just don't even know about.
want to leave a little bit of time for a Q&A, but before we get there, you all are leaders in your own respective fields. How do you all recognize each other and other women, forging a path in venture capital as funders, and just, beyond just the regular desk? What are the things that you do to, hey sis, hey, I see you over there, but in the venture capital way?
Send them deals and tell entrepreneurs that I think that they're smart and that they should talk to them, because I think there's two sides of it. Because on one hand, I think female entrepreneurs are underfunded and they have struggled to get access. But then on the other side, women VCs who are either they're struggling to raise, or who are trying to build their pipeline and build, credibility among entrepreneurs. That's hard as well, because I think you have a lot of really talented entrepreneurs who've been conditioned to believe that if that check's not coming from, big VC X, then it's not as credible. Or if they're not able to get into X accelerator, it's not as credible. And so I think that on both ends, just continuing to point out, no, this is a smart, talented person who's worth your time, to my peers. And then on the other side with entrepreneurs, continuing to just say these are really, really talented people. They have capital or they have a great idea, and trying to make as many matches as I can.
I would say cut in checks as an angel. That's one, supporting women. Going back to what Christina was saying, I like pubbing my friends. I think I have brilliant friends, especially here in the Bay Area. One, works in tech and is a fashion designer. Another one is a blogger. Another one started a healthcare company. Just telling people about them all the time, and then just taking information from the funds that I'm a part of and sharing it with them. So sharing it with other founders, here are some metrics that people might be looking at that you might want to hit if you want to be funded. And it's easy for me to talk about because I've been in finance for a while. And if you're not let's say you're a creative, you're like, what are you talking about? Joy, like Jena said, I'm busy running my business. Why do you need me to think about these metrics and all these things? Because I want you to get $1 million check. That's why. And so just share, again, it goes back to education and lifting our sisters up.
All right, thank you. Let's jump into Q&A. Looks like we have, do you all ever get tired of having to share your narrative all the time? Social media feels exhausting at times. How do you find the balance?
I can take that one. So I personally hate social media. I'm pretty much only on LinkedIn and a private Instagram account. And there's I'm encouraged by a number of people to have a Twitter presence, because there is VC Twitter and it's a whole thing. But having a presence doesn't necessarily just mean social media. So for me, for instance, I started my own newsletter for people who are interested in what I was building, that I send now to around 50 people. And that's the way I keep in touch and keep relationships with people. So thinking about what is authentic to you, if you're on Twitter like that, do it, because it is the way a lot of people have actually been able to raise, especially non-traditional founders and people in VC. But if that's not really your lane, figure out which way is best for you, whether that's in-person events, having your own private newsletter, but definitely thinking about what connections are authentic to you and how do you build that out as telling your story, because then you're much more in control of your story and it doesn't have to feel so exhausting because you're already building a company. Don't add more to your plate.
I would say no, because you can't be what you can't see. So I've had so many people pour into me. I feel very fortunate to be where I am. I mean, how dare I be social media? Yes, that's one thing. I have 3 posts on Instagram because I just decided, I'm getting older. I don't feel like dealing with Instagram. But being available for, things like this, meetups, talking to people one-on-one over Zoom, absolutely. No, I don't. And I'm chatty, as you can tell. I don't get tired of chatting with people, especially us when it comes to talking about money and investing. I don't get tired at all.
I wanted to just jump in as a person who has a social media agency. I totally understand the burnout of creating content and telling stories. I think my one kind of tidbit for you would be to reuse your content and really zero in on what it is that you want to share about. Like there's a way to reuse, right? So something from this could just be turned into a quote that I could post, right? And that would be an easy lift for me to use the content that I'm already sharing in the world. So that's what I would say. And I would also echo just what everyone else said, like do what works for you. Like I took a note for myself, like I could totally start a newsletter. I could do that for me, right? That makes sense for me. And so I think really sitting with what makes sense for you. And also deciding that sometimes you don't want to share, and that's okay. We're not mad. We'll wait.
What if, we're about to bring this conversation to a close. I know it's gone by so quickly. What are people not saying? What do you wish people were asking that we're not talking about?
When you say not talking about, you mean like what we haven't touched here? I would say maybe just the dominance, which may have already been talked about in earlier sessions, so apologies. The dominance of men in this space and the boldness or the gall that men have to ask for money, to network, to do all the things that I feel like sometimes we don't have. But I also think we don't have it for reason. We, again, it goes back to access, but then also just sometimes we're not invited. So even if it's an access issue because you don't know about something, it may also be an access issue because you're not invited to the party. You're not invited to that founder circle that Gina's talking about. You may not be invited, if you're a creative, you may not be invited because somebody may think, oh, your company isn't tech or it isn't healthcare, it isn't that, even though super successful and creatives are the thing right now. Like the creator economy and creatives, like that is the bee's knees right now. So I feel like just talking about how we may not even be invited to certain spaces, I think is something that we also have to acknowledge in this conversation. Like we're making it sound easy. Oh, it absolutely isn't. Even if you want to write a check, I'm not always I'm not invited to write a check for every fund.
I would add to just like the tension you're going to be in. I think, and the thing I think about a lot is like, it is such a relationship built industry. It is such a like, when you get that invite, you might not always still feel comfortable being at that place. And it's also not built for you, right? And so there's this tension between at least for me, how do I join this space, but also how do I join it knowing that I want to change it? And what does that mean for like, how do I show up? How do I interact with these people? And what do I stand for? What I don't stand for? And so just like thinking about the tension you're going to be in as a person of color, as a woman, as all the identities you encompass, like the ecosystem that we're in isn't really built for us. And so it's going to be uncomfortable, but like, what are the ways that you can find comfort, and what are the ways in which you're okay with moving against that system? That's something I think about every day. And like why things like this are so great is because you can find people, like what I've been focused on is like finding those like-minded people who want to see the change that I want to see and connecting with them to like kind of build up my reserve for like the inability of like running into something that I don't like, or having to figure out like, oh, this sounds like a great opportunity, but it doesn't really align with my values. And so like, that's something I think that's like talked about a little bit less, that I think it's important for everyone to think about, whether you're a founder or investor or whatever. It's really like, how do you want to show up in this space, and what does that look like for you long-term and inform your decisions?
I think something I'll add to the conversation is I think, so just from our experience, we were working with Clubhouse really at its rise. We've spent 7 months really kind of behind the scenes managing their social media. My team went from me and my partner working on Clubhouse to needing a 6 to 8 people to manage the account. And I think for us, yes, we got paid for our work, but we didn't walk away with any press about our work with Clubhouse. They didn't they didn't make any introductions for us. Like there were, so what about these people who are supporting the rise of venture invested companies, right? Like what about the folks who also need, like we were a part of the growth. It was almost like we were on a rocket and we also had to grow, and then you just kind of get dropped off, right? And so I think that that's an important part of the conversation as well, is like, who are the folks who are actually supporting this rise and what happens to them, right? In the space of venture capital too.
I think that is a great note to end on. Show up for each other and show up with somebody else, because that's how you bring more of us into the community. You change the narrative, and you share information that way. One last word, lightning round, tips that you have for funding us, and I'll start with Jena.
Tips for funding us. I would just encourage folks to dig deeper. Like I think about even myself, I really feel like I've been experienced. I've done the courses, I've done all of the things, and I still just haven't found my space. And maybe it's the way I'm marketing myself, but I just want to encourage the folks who do have capital to like dig deeper, do just go a little deeper. And it may even just be having a call so that you can feel the energy from a person and say, you know what, I looked over your application, but now that I'm hearing from you, I want to circle back. I think that would really be very helpful for folks like myself.
Thank you, Joy.
Take a risk and cut the check.
Awesome. Christina.
Tell someone else what you're working on. Tell a lot of people what you're working on, and make sure that folks know that we're out here doing this sort of work.
Victoria.
I'll kind of go into what Joy said earlier, but ask people who you don't think to ask. Like, don't just go after the current funding sources. Think about all the people who are just not invited to the table, and ask them to the table who might have money or resources or information that you need.
Thank you, everyone. So that's going to bring this session to a close. I want to thank you all for your time today and your wisdom. I'm going to get ready to get TJ back on the stage to bring us on home and close us out. And I encourage you to go into the breakout rooms and chat with each other. Also, if you're on social media, use the hashtag #FundWomenNow. And this has been awesome. See you soon.